Good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to have here today the NYU Stern School of Business, Professor Aswath Damodaran. Professor, thanks to join us.
Thank you for having me.
So we are here today because went out in Italy your new book, and let me say the title in Italian, that is Guida pratica alla valutazione d'azienda, come individuare i migliori investimenti azionari. And I would like to ask you some questions about it, especially when obviously we talk about the main topic, that is evaluation. In your opinion, which are probably the bigger mistakes that investors usually do when they do evaluations?
They make up their mind first and then they do evaluation last. I mean, the biggest mistake people make in valuation is the valuation doesn't guide them on what to invest in. It reaffirms what they've already decided. We're human beings. We decide on something and then we want everybody around us to tell us we did the right thing. I mean, let's face it, we do that in our everyday lives. Why would we leave it outside the door when we pick stocks? So part of the reason I wrote that book is not that I can make you make that process go away, but to start at least the process of being honest with yourself. I mean, you can lie to everybody around you, but you shouldn't be lying to yourself. So this is a book where I essentially said the way people justify taking actions is they build big spreadsheets. And when the spreadsheets don't give them a number they like, they just change the number in the spreadsheet. So if the number is too low, they increase the growth rate and make the margins higher. And I said, that's not the way the real world works. If you're in a business, increasing your growth rate doesn't happen like it does on a spreadsheet, 12 to 15. You got work to do. So we need to fill in those gaps behind the numbers by telling a story about a company. That was at the heart of why I wrote the book. As I said, look, you can lie to yourself as much as you want, but I'm not going to change your growth rate on a spreadsheet from 12 to 15%. I'm going to make you tell me the story about what this company can do to grow faster. It puts flesh behind the numbers, because if you have numbers in a spreadsheet, it's not a valuation. It's a financial model. To make a financial model into a valuation, you got to fill in the details about what the story is behind the numbers.
And especially you talk about story, and the history of a company is very important because, for example, it has a very big impact on the evaluation on the company, especially on the price on the company. So it's not only a question of financial data, but if we should, and I go to the next question, if I have to put a sort of, let me say, potential weights about financial data and history, how much?
And it's not history. I don't care about history. History is irrelevant. It's story.
Story. Okay.
You can have no history and a great story, and I can have a great history and a terrible story. So let's be very clear. History is backward looking. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about story for the future. So this is not about financial data versus history, because financial data is history. In fact, that's a promise. People think history will tell them what the future will deliver. And the problem with that belief is history is not always a good predictor of the future. In fact, if history was all that mattered, then you could do financial modeling. So I'm going to argue it's not between financial data and history, it's between history and the story for the future, because the story for the future doesn't always reflect history, it reflects changes in the world.
And going forward to the story that now is priced today, for example, let me say about the AI, the blockchain, all these kind of topics. So do you think that the traditional valuation methods are still good in this particular environment, and in which way we can combine this with the story? For example, talking about, I don't know, the Magnificent Seven, the big tech stocks. So how we can approach to this topic and to these stocks regarding mixing the two things?
I'm not even sure what a traditional valuation method is. By traditional valuation method, you say, does the value of a business depend on its cash flows, growth, and risk? There's nothing traditional about it, just common sense. So I'm not sure what traditional is, because when people talk about traditional, what they're talking about is a financial model with rigid rules. Value is value. It can't change in 2025 relative to where it was in 1925 or 1425. A Venetian glassmaker who sold his business to somebody else in the 1500s based it on cash flows, how quickly those cash flows are growing, and how uncertain he felt about the future.
Yeah.
An investor looking at a company in 2025 faces exactly the same challenge. This has nothing to do with valuation methods. I think the sooner we decide that, the healthier the discussion becomes. Because you think it's about valuation methods, you know what the solution is, right? Let's come up with a new method. That's not the answer. The valuation basis doesn't change. It's the way you think about the numbers that needs to change. So don't go looking for new models and new methods. There's no equivalent of an Ozempic here for the fact that you can't lose weight. There is no magic pill that I can give you. This just requires that you step back and think about, what am I trying to do? How much is this business worth? And using common sense.
Yeah, sure. And let me go to the last question of the interview that is related to what happened, for example, during the weekend on the last week about, for example, the big drop of Nvidia and the story that is behind the price of the AI and all these kind of things. So how we can analyze this particular situation, especially because now everyone talks about AI. So how we can approach this kind of particular things?
Perfect example to illustrate the link between story and value. Let's go back a week ago. It's only a week ago.
Yeah.
There was no DeepSeek, right? And most of it, remember, this came out of nowhere. There's been weeks, but it got listed on the apps, and people started downloading it. Last Friday, if you ask people, tech people, investors, what they thought about the AI market, here's a story that I've heard. The market itself for the products and services, so we're talking about you and I buying AI products, businesses buying, that market is going to be huge. Why? Because it's going to make our lives easier. I've heard this story before, but you can argue trillions of dollars are going to be spent, all promised now, because if you think about how much we're actually spending on AI products and services, it's almost nothing right now. But there is this promise, trillions of dollars. Then we were told that to enter this market, you need two things. You need insanely powerful computers that we hadn't really seen before, driven by computer chips that were, so advanced that only one company in the world right now makes them. Everybody else is trying, Nvidia. And insane amounts of data as well, right? It's that combination of computing power and data. That's what you need to enter. And already you can see the structure of a business emerging, which is you have this trillions of dollars of products and services. You have this big entry requirement, which means this is going to be a business that's going to be dominated by a few big players, probably the big tech companies. That essentially is a story, and what's happened over the last 2 years in the market kind of backed up that story. Nvidia went up 3 trillion in market cap. The big tech companies gained 5 trillion in market cap. Companies like Palantir and others who are in the front rows all gained hundreds of billions. The market was off to the races. But we were getting a little ahead of ourselves, right? We weren't, and over the weekend, we saw DeepSeek come out. What is different about DeepSeek? Lots of distractions you can get caught up with. It was developed in China. Who founded it? How much it cost? How it works against
It changes the story.
It changes the story, because basically it goes to that front part of the story and says, hey, you can be in this business without buying Nvidia chips, with your existing computers and without a database.
Yeah.
The story's changed. In what way? I think starting Monday, people said, remember the story of the emperor's new clothes, where the emperor has no clothes, but, he says, only people who are smart can see my clothes, and everybody kept convincing themselves they were seeing the clothes.
Okay.
And nobody had the courage to say, you're wearing no clothes. And then a child said, the emperor is naked. And all of a sudden, everybody else woke up to it. Well, the AI emperor on Monday, we discovered it's not that the AI emperor has no clothes, but maybe has a major wardrobe malfunction, which is people said that story might not be true. And all of a sudden, investors had to reassess. How did that play out? Nvidia lost $580 billion in market cap in one day. I mean, the percentages sometimes hide the magnitude of what happened. And people said, what the heck happened? Well, the story, if it hasn't come apart, has sprung leaks. Here's what I think happens post DeepSeek. I think the old story will continue to apply for a subset of the AI product and service market. There are AI products and services that will require supercomputing power and data. So when Palantir works with the government to come up with an AI product for the Defense Department, that may require the old story. But if you're developing an AI for accounting, this is a rule-based profession. I don't need to have the data of every accountant's history. I don't need super powerful computers. I can get there with the DeepSeek pathway. So you create a bifurcated market. The story is changed. And from Monday on, you basically have to reassess what the value of companies will be. It was a good illustration. Usually when I talk about this in class, people say, well, how can a story change that quickly?
Yeah.
You know what? This DeepSeek news will bring home what I was talking about much more powerfully than any words I could use in my class. So when you value companies, I think it's critical that you understand the story, but you also have to be aware of things that are happening around you that can change the story. You're buying Gucci, whether you like it or not, you're buying a story of a very exclusive club where people will pay thousands of dollars for a bag that might cost $50 to make. Why? Because of the name Gucci.
Yeah, probably is for this reason that we talk about that stock market is about, especially expectations of the stock market, because usually, for example, when we have the quarter earnings, we saw similar probably path. No, it's not the way that a company or a stock go good or bad because the data are good or bad, but because the expectation probably about this data.
Investing is always so. It's not just the stock market. We should live our world based on what the future will bring than what the past has delivered, right? We're told this, but let's face it, safety always drives us back to that comfort of the past. So we keep doing the things we've always done because we're comfortable. We know we shouldn't be eating that burger with 3,000 calories in it and drinking 4 glasses of wine, but it's so comfortable staying with the past because it worked in the past. So this is just a microcosm of what we as human beings face. In the market, you have no way of running away from it. It's an expectations game, and those expectations can change as your story changes.
Wonderful. Well, very, very, very interesting, Professor. For me, it has been a very incredible experience to have you here with us. So thanks again for joining us. And let me remind one last time your last book that in Italy, I have to say the title in Italy, that is called Guida pratica alla valutazione d'azienda, come individuare i migliori investimenti azionari, published by Oepli. Professor, thanks to join us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.